Hi everyone, my name is Luke Sinek. I'm the course leader for A-Level Biology here at New College. Thanks for joining today and thanks for checking out this video to learn a little bit more about what the course involves here at New College. So the idea for this video is that you're going to get a little introduction to the A-Level Biology course and what topics that it involves. We're going to focus just very briefly on one of the topics that we do, which is about the circulatory system, and within there to do with the structure of blood. And then I'm going to show you how you could take part in some genuine citizen science research that's related to what's inside blood and how that can be involved and how you can get involved in a genuine research project looking at some of the different cells that are found inside blood. So just a quick overview for what different topics are involved in A-Level Biology. It's actually very similar to what you'll be currently studying for GCSE Biology, just in a lot more detail and more depth than you will have covered before. So we do some practical skills that are assessed throughout year 1 and year 2. But in the first year, we focus on some foundational content for biology, which includes things like cell structure, enzymes, biological molecules like DNA, and cell division. And then we go on to looking at how things are transported around the body and how some organ systems work together, for example, the circulatory system and the gas exchange system. And then also we look at evolution and natural selection, some biodiversity, such as how we investigate organisms in the environment and how that links to the disease, which includes looking at an introduction to the immune system. Then in the second year, we focus on communication and homeostasis, which includes looking at the nervous system, muscles, the liver and the kidney, and how they regulate a constant internal environment, and also looking at respiration and photosynthesis in a lot of detail. There's also a big section on genetics, which includes some really current research and information about how we can use genetic technologies to further our understanding of human health and disease. So this is just a little snapshot again of what we cover in the first year. And like I said, we look at some foundational things like cell structure, DNA, enzymes, proteins, carbohydrates, and also how enzymes work and how things move across membranes. Bits to do with how different animals and plants transport things around themselves. And then also a module on disease and the immune system, but with a link as well to investigating organisms in their environment. So what I'm just going to go through a little bit with you today is a small section of transport in animals, which focuses on how mammals transport different substances around their bodies. So for example, the circulatory system is a key part of that. Now in mammals, the way in which we transport different substances is inside blood. So I just want you just to think for a moment, what do you know about what different things you find in blood? So you might be able to think of some different cell types that you find within blood, but also some additional substances as well that you find in blood. So blood is actually made up of two main parts, the plasma and then the cell component. Within the plasma, that's mostly water, but it's also where you find important proteins like antibodies. You find lots of dissolved salts, so sodium ions, potassium ions, that are all really important for nervous transmission, for example. You find important nutrients like transport of glucose and amino acids and fatty acids that are the building block of larger biological molecules. You find waste products like urea and also some other proteins like hormones, for example, insulin and estrogen. And finally, it's obviously where gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide are also transported. So apart from the liquid component of blood, the other main thing is there are some specific specialized cell types that you also find within blood, which include red blood cells and white blood cells, and also platelets that are involved in clotting. Now, one of the practicals that we do in A-level biology is producing what's called a blood smear, which is where you can take a sample of your own blood and spread it across a microscope slide. And we can do this actually in our own laboratory at New College, in the science labs. With the microscopes that we have available, you can get an image that looks very similar to this actually, where once you spread out a sample of your blood and you look at the blood sample under about 400 times magnification, this is the sort of thing that you can see. It also requires you sometimes to use specialized stains, because different stains can help you to identify different cell types within samples, and blood is a good example of that. So as you can see here, there's lots and lots of things that look quite similar. And all of these small circular shapes here are actually the red blood cells, which are the main component of blood. But there are also some additional things. Sometimes you get artifacts like this, which may be things due to how you prepared the cell. But then you also see lots of these small dots, which are the platelets, which are tiny cell fragments which are used in blood clotting. And then also these unusual larger cells that stand out as being quite different than the smaller red blood cells. Now these are the white blood cells that are all involved in somehow fighting infection from bacteria and viruses, for example. And as you can see, the internal structure of these white blood cells is quite different. Now there are lots and lots of different types of white blood cells that you find within a blood smear. This is another picture where it's showing it's stained again with the red blood cells very nice and clear and red, but the other types of white blood cells looking more purple, which is where if you use a different stain, you can pick a stain that would attach to the DNA that then you would only find inside the white blood cells rather than in the red blood cells, which don't contain a nucleus. So this picture is just showing a selection of some of the different cell types that you find as white blood cells. So this is a good example of the level of extra detail that you go into at A-level biology compared to GCSE. So at GCSE, you might have just learned that there are different white blood cells and that they're involved in the immune response. While at A-level biology, then there's a little bit more detail to learn in terms of some examples of some of the different white blood cells. And actually this image here is showing some even more detail than you would go into at A-level. So the main ones that we look at A-level are this cell here, a neutrophil, which has got this very distinctive, what's called a multi-lobed nucleus shape. We will also look at different types of lymphocytes, which are the cells that one type of lymphocyte, called the B lymphocyte, is involved in making antibodies, which I expect you would have heard quite a lot about on the news recently, because antibodies are very important in fighting against bacteria and viruses. And it's actually one of the tests they've been using for coronavirus of people who have had a coronavirus infection is using an antibody test. There are some other different types of white blood cell as well. So there are monocytes, for example, and these are ones that are called phagocytic cells that, as well as the neutrophils, will go and engulf and destroy bacteria and viruses. But there are some other additional white blood cells that you can see have quite a different structure. Again, a slightly different shaped nucleus and a slightly different internal looking structure to them as well. Now, I'm just going to show you a really interesting website that's got loads of great citizen science projects that you can get involved with that would involve looking at blood cells so that you can actually take part in some genuine science research. So the website that's good for this is one called Zuniverse. So if you look at the top, you have to search for zuniverse.org and it comes up with this website. Now, you can register. It's very simple to register. You just need to make up a username and an email address, but you don't have to. But the really nice thing if you do that is it records your progress. So if you do multiple different projects, it keeps track of all the different projects that you do and how much work that you've done on the different citizen science projects. But just for today, if you don't want to, you can just click on here, projects. And the one that I'm going to ask you to have a look for is one that's called Monkey Health Explorer. So this is a really interesting and exciting project that's based around some researchers that work in North Carolina in America. And for all the projects, there's always a learn more button. And so I'm just going to quickly run through this. There's a lot more that you could take in yourself if you wanted to take time to read about it. But this project is actually based around looking at blood samples from rhesus macaques. And their rhesus macaques are a type of monkey native to Africa and Asia, but there is this particular population that is found on a small island off of the eastern coast of Puerto Rico. And they've been studied for a long time, and scientists are interested in how they get affected by when they have infections due to bacteria and viruses. But in order to understand better how their bodies are responding to infection, then they're trying to look at what the blood of these monkeys, these macaques, is not like normally. So this is where they need the help of citizen scientists, which could involve you as well. So if you go back to the main project, then there's ways of getting started. Now there's also beginner's practice that I would recommend that you start with first. Now what it will show you is it comes up with a little guide. So this is the same picture that I was just showing you previously, where it's given you a little outline to what the different cells are that you find within blood. And it tells you how to use the different sites and all the different buttons there for you to use, which is very useful. And it also then goes through what they would like you to do in the task. One of which, first of all, is just to determine whether there's enough cells for you to be able to use the sample for. What this task is doing is asking you to try and identify the white blood cells and to have a go at identifying what type of white blood cells they are. Now, even if you find this quite tricky, the really clever thing about this is it compiles results from lots of different people all over the world, and it gets a kind of average of what people think the different cells are. So just make your best guess based on their structure and what they look like. And so it gives you a little video tutorial here of how you can tell the differences between the different white blood cells, which you can have a look in your own time. Okay, so let's just have a go so I can show you what sort of thing they want you to do. So here's a sample of blood, and it's actually a similar one to what I was showing you before, wasn't it? It might be the same one that I was showing you before. So as I was saying, there's definitely 3 clear white blood cells here. All you have to do is click the left button on a white blood cell. You can zoom in a bit if you want to as well, so you can see it in a little bit more detail. So that's definitely a white blood cell there, isn't there? So I can click on that one. But then I've got to try and look through, what does it look most similar to? Now, actually, I think the inside of this white blood cell is a little bit grey, and it's got that kind of multi-lobed shape, but it's a more grey inside than a neutrophil. So I think that's an eosinophil. I'm going to click on that one, and I click OK, and it's labelled that one as being a white blood cell. There's a field guide that can come up if you want to have a look more, and it's got a little guide to some of the different cells that you might find along there. So that's just on the tab on the right. I'm going to scroll across to have a look at see if I can find another cell, which is those 2 over here. Again, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. So again, these 2 is quite good to tell the difference, isn't it? Because they might look like they've got a similar inside, but it's definitely darker on the inside than that one. So if I go back, I think this one is a good example of a neutrophil, which is one of the cells that involves in like engulfing and which is essentially like eating different bacteria and viruses. So I can label that one. This one though does look a bit different, so I think that's another eosinophil, isn't it? Could be a monocyte because again that shape, but in that kind of curved shaped nucleus, I'm going to say that one's an eosinophil as well. So then I'm going to zoom back out. I think that's all the different white blood cells that I can see there. There's just those 3. So then once you're done, you can click next. and then done. And it gives you another thing to be able to have a look through. So I'll just do one more for you. So there's a few white blood cells up here, mostly red blood cells, but there definitely are a few top here. So there's these three. Now again, both of these two got that multi-lobed nucleus, which I think is a neutrophil. I'm going to click neutrophil there. And this one again is definitely a neutrophil. So I'm going to click neutrophil. This one, it's a little bit smaller, isn't it, than the other white blood cells, but a little bit bigger than the red blood cell. And the nucleus, if you have a look, is taking up nearly the whole cell. So I think that one is actually a lymphocyte, one of those ones that might be involved in making antibodies, for example. So again, click next, and then you can click done. And you can go through as many of those as you like. And if you sign up, it keeps track of how many you've done. And so again, just to kind of show you, it tells you how many other people have been doing this. So actually, 4,000 other people have been doing this task, and together, collectively, they've identified 93,000, almost 100,000 individual slides like those ones I just showed you have been identified by different people. So this builds up a huge network of different things and different information, which helps scientists to give a baseline for how the monkey's blood normally has a sample of different white blood cells. So this is a really good one because it is a skill that you need to know for your A-level. It would help with your GCSE as well for identifying different types of white blood cell, and it's a really good way of contributing to some genuine scientific research. So let's go back to the beginning. I hope that's given you a little bit of an introduction to the A-level biology course. We've had a little think about different types of cells in the blood. And if you want to go onto Zuniverse.org and look for Monkey Health Explorer, then there's all the information there that you need to use to be able to take part in the citizen science research project. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you at New College to study A-level biology in the future.